Well, hey there, Step Up Men. We're going to try this again. I know a couple of weeks ago I did try to do a recap of our meeting for those of you that couldn't make it. This time's a little bit different. I didn't lead the discussion. A missionary that came a couple of weeks ago that you may remember meeting, Andrew, led out for us, and it was a fantastic message. So what I'm going to try to do is just recap it as best I can. I won't be able to do it as well as he did, but it was an incredible message. He started in Mark chapter 8, starting in verse 31. And it says, "And Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." And he was stating the matter plainly. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, meaning Peter rebuking Jesus. But turning around and seeing his disciples, Jesus, rebuked Peter. And he said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you're not setting your mind on God's interest, but on man's." So Peter wasn't really understanding. I don't think any of the disciples were understanding when Jesus started teaching about him having to suffer. At that point, they didn't understand anything about what Jesus was doing. They were still under the mindset that the Messiah was going to come and conquer and be the new king. So this idea of suffering was a little bit foreign to him. Jesus went on in verse 34 and he said, and he summoned the crowd with his disciples, so he got them all together. He said, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." So the point that Andrew was trying to make was the disciples and the rest of the people listening didn't know what Jesus was talking about. And then he begins talking about denying yourself and taking up your cross. Well, this is the first that they've heard of a cross. They don't know what is to come. Jesus does. And they know what crucifixion is, but they're somewhat confused about what it means to take up your cross. Jesus is speaking mostly figuratively here about bearing our cross. And of course, they're listening literally, because that's how most of us hear, unless we know someone speaking figuratively. One of the things that Andrew went into was he did a deep dive on the Greek word deny, where Jesus says deny yourself, and it's a very strong word to utterly deny or disown or complete rejection of your own wants, needs, and desires for the sake of others, which is exactly what Jesus did. He gave up his crown full of jewels. He gave up his at least for a time, his ruling authority. He gave up walking the streets of gold, sitting next to the Father, to come down here and die a very violent and a very embarrassing death. And he did that for all of us, because he certainly didn't deserve that. And Jesus chose to do that. There's another place in Scripture, Andrew didn't talk about this, but I was thinking about it last night, where Jesus said, I could call down legions of angels to rescue me from this, but this is what I have been called to do. This is what I chose to do. So the gist of this story is, if we're called to follow Jesus and do the things that Jesus did, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what are you sacrificing today? None of us can sacrifice what Jesus did. That's not even possible. But we are called to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him and sacrifice so that we may bless others. One of the scriptures that Andrew read was Genesis 2:12. It's talking about Abram, who later became Abraham. And God says, I will make you a great nation. I'm sorry, Genesis 12:2. I think I said 2:12. Genesis 12:2. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. So here's the big idea. God blesses us so that we can be blessings to others. He doesn't bless us necessarily just to reward us so that we can get to a point in life where we said, I've made it. I'm at the top of the heap. I've grown my business. I've gotten the degree that I want. I've gotten the recognition that I want. No, the blessings that we get from God are only so that we can pass those blessings, or we can become a blessing to others. You've heard me say before, don't ask God, give me a blessing. Ask God, make me a blessing. Kind of the same situation here. Jesus chose to do what he did. Paul chose to enter into a life of ministry where he was abused and stoned and beaten and all of the things. But he chose that because that was the greater choice rather than to please himself. Andrew read from 2 Timothy 3:12, where Paul writes to Timothy, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. There's no question. If we choose to follow Jesus and take up our cross, then there are going to be hard times because of that. And we should actually welcome those things, because it kind of gives us an indication that we are doing as God asked us to do. He also read from 2 Peter 2:21. It says, for to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his steps. Now don't miss that. Christ suffered for us, leaving for us an example. An example is something to be followed. An example is something to emulate, to go after. And that's exactly what Peter says that Christ did for us. So ultimately, the gist of the teaching last night was asking yourself this question, or saying this to yourself. Does there need to be more to this life than what I'm experiencing? Am I at a plateau? Am I in a rut and can't even get to a plateau? Does it seem like every time I take a step forward, I take a step back? That may be because we haven't really denied ourselves and taken up our cross and done something radical to follow Jesus. Andrew gave a great example last night. He said, most Christians would say God is number one. Their family is number two in their life, and maybe number three is their job or the things in their community or something like that. And he said that's actually not the way we should look at it. God is not number one. Now hang on before you jump sideways on me here. He said God is the paper that you write the list on. So your spouse may be number one, your kids may be number two, maybe your job's number three. God is the whole reason that we make a list. He's not even on the list. He's the reason for the list. And I think a lot of us miss that. I know that I was thinking about that last night when he was saying that. I said, I think I've missed that. I want to say that God is number one on my list, but God should be the paper that the list is written on. That was an excellent point that Andrew made. So he closed with saying this: you have to find opportunities to sacrifice, and you have to go out and find those opportunities. They don't happen to you, you go find them. And he was able to share some of the things that I've experienced that he and his family do in Peru where they live, and in bringing in underprivileged kids into their home and feeding them and pouring into them, and people that you, even adults that you normally wouldn't have any contact with. And they had to deny their normal feelings of, I don't want to be around someone like this, or, what if it's even a little bit dangerous, to actually sacrifice. And the blessing that they have received from that is tremendous. I was able to witness that last year when I was down for the mission trip. It's incredible how much of a blessing it is to be able to really get outside of your comfort zone and start to love on people and pour into people that you normally wouldn't. It's life-changing. I know people use those words a lot, but it truly is life-changing. It's definitely heart-changing if it's not life-changing. So what are some of the ways that you can take up your cross, that you can step out and be uncomfortable? Number one, all of us aren't going to be missionaries to a foreign country or a third world country. But there's other ways you can do it with your resources. What are your resources? Well, maybe it's your money, but you may not have a lot of money as a resource, but you've got a place to live. Most of us have a vehicle that we can get around in. What ways can we step out of our comfort zone and help people with the resources God has given us? Remember, God blessed us so that we can bless others, not so that we can sit back and enjoy the blessing that he blessed us with. Another thing is your time. You can give of your time, and in America, time is one of those things that we seem to not have much of. All the conveniences that have been created to make our lives easier and give us more time, it's just caused us to have even less time. Go figure. I don't know how that even works. But another thing that you can give of greatly is your forgiveness, especially to people that it's undeserved. And sometimes the reception of undeserved forgiveness from people can change the hardest of hearts. And that's something that you can do, and it doesn't cost you a penny. Finally, opportunities. If you can provide opportunities for people that maybe don't deserve it, hire someone that you wouldn't normally hire if you have a business. Give them a chance. There's a lot of different ways that we can provide opportunities for people through the network that we have, the resources that we have. And the point that Andrew was making was, do this when it's not something that would be easy, when maybe you have to step out on faith to provide an opportunity for somebody else. So, yeah, that was kind of the gist of it. Ultimately, what Andrew was saying, and the same thing that Jesus says, is we need to sacrifice. And if we want to be blessed, the best way that we can be blessed is by sacrificing and blessing others. I think he's a fine example of that. At 22 years old, he and his young wife, barely newlyweds, deciding they're just going to move to Peru without a real plan other than just to follow whatever God tells them to do. Now they've been there 13 years and they're raising a beautiful family. They've got a great church down there. It's fantastic, but they don't live with the conveniences that we have here in America. And honestly, I don't think they would have it any other way. So at the end of the day, that's basically what the lesson was. It was incredible. We had the opportunity to pray over Andrew and his family and lay hands on him. We had a good group, one of the largest groups we ever had. Numbers don't really mean a lot to me, but I'm glad that God is blessing this group. For those of you that couldn't make it, I don't want to rub it in, but you missed a great one. But we'll be back doing this again in a couple of weeks. So that's all I've got for this one, and just want to remind you all that I love you, and there's not a thing you can do about it. Y'all take care.